Hello boys and girls, today we are going to talk about the simple tree planting problems. So bring your pencils and notebook and also your excellent mindset and your good mood and start your math journey with me. So who am I? My name is Helen and I'm responding for the Primary 4 mathematics teaching. So here is our table of contents. We are going to talk about 4 types of tree planting problems today. Before we get started, let me ask you a question first. Okay, so let's have a revision first. Let's try to divide the road. How long is the road? Who can tell me how long is the road? Yes, it is 10 meters long and we need to divide the road by every 2 meters. Every 2 meters to divide it. Is it? So how many intervals can be divided on this road? What means by intervals? It means that the range that we need to divide the road. This is calling an interval. So we need to equally divide the road into every 2 meters. So how can we calculate it? We can use 10 to divide 2 because the total length is 10 and we need to find how many 2 meters are there in 10 meters road, right? So the answer is 5. Very good. And let's see the next question here. There is a round flower bed with circumference. What means by circumference? Circumference means perimeter. Maybe some of you know. It means the length of a round object. So the circumference of the flower bed is 30 meters and it can be divided into how many intervals with 5 meters? So how can we write the calculation? It is 30 divided by 5 and equals to 6. So let's check. How can we divide the flower bed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We got 6 intervals with 5 meters each. So this is calling an interval. This is calling an interval. Okay, so we can conclude that no matter the road is straight or it is a round object, a round flower bed, or a round other any stuff, we can use division method to find the number of intervals. So after knowing this, we can continue to the next page. Exploring 1. There is a road in front of your home and the gardener wants to plant trees along one side of the road. Solve the problems below and summarize their characteristics. And the question is telling us to ignore the width of the trees because it can make our calculation more simple. And if one side of the road is divided into 6 intervals, a tree is planted on every interval. Both ends are planted with trees. So how many trees can be planted? Think it in your mind. How many trees can be planted? Maybe you think it is 6, or maybe you think it is 7, or maybe some of you will think it is 14. First, because we are talking about one side of the road, so the students who said the answer is 14 must be wrong. Because we are talking about one side, so we do not need to consider this side. We only need to consider one side of the road is okay. Okay, then let's see. Let's count from the diagram. How many trees are there? Yes, you can count it from the diagram. It is 7 trees. And how many intervals? 6 intervals. So we can write it down together. There are 6 intervals and 7 trees. Is the number of intervals and the number of trees the same? No, they are different. Which one is larger, tree or interval? Yes, tree is larger. And why is this so? Let's check it together. We can use a tree and an interval as a package to count it. We make it as a package, a tree and an interval as a package, a tree and an interval, and we make it as a package 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and hey, why there is a tree left hanging behind here? That means tree is more than the intervals. So we need to use the number of intervals 2 plus 1 and equals to the number of trees. Okay, and let's continue to the next question. Okay, now let's read the question together with me. If one side of the road is divided into 6 intervals, a tree is planted on every interval, but stones are placed on 2 ends. So how many trees can be planted? What means by stones are placed on 2 ends? Can we still plant any trees on the 2 ends if there are stones? No, right? So how many trees are there? Count it for me. Yes, very good. There are 5 trees. And how many intervals? 6 intervals. So we can write it down, 6 intervals. And 5 trees. Is the number the same? No. Which one is larger? Intervals is larger, right? So let us check it again by our method. That is to pack a tree and to pack an interval together as a package. It is a packaging method. We got 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 5, and there is an interval left here. So that means the number of interval is larger than the number of trees. So when we need to calculate the number of trees, we can just use the number of intervals, that is 6, minus 1 and equals to 5, because the number of intervals is larger. So we need to minus 1 to get the number of trees. Okay, now, next one. Okay, now, and let's read this question together. If one side of the road is divided into 6 intervals, a tree is planted on every interval, but one end is blocked by a stone. As we can see from the diagram, so that means can we plant any tree here? No, and we give it a cross. So how many trees can be planted? Count it and tell me the answer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very good. There are 6 trees can be planted. And how many intervals? 6 intervals. So we can see that there are 6 intervals and 6 trees. Is the number the same or different? Yes, the number is same. And let's check our answer by packaging a tree and an interval together using our packaging method. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hey, are there any trees or any intervals left behind? No. So that means every tree and every intervals are well packaged. No one is left behind, and it shows that the number of intervals equals to the number of trees. Okay, so we complete this question and we move on, continue. How about this one? If a road becomes rounded, it is a rounded road and divided into 6 intervals again, a tree is planted on each interval. So how many trees can be planted? And you can count it from here. How many trees? Yes, obviously it is 6 trees. And how many intervals are there? Count it for me. 6 intervals. Very good. So there are 6 intervals. And 6 trees. Is the number the same or different? Yes, the number is same. So let's check our answer by our packaging method again. We pack a tree and an interval together as one package and 2 packages and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. So how many packages we found it? 6 packages. Are there any one left behind? No, they are all means that the number of trees is equals to the number of intervals. And we can write it down again, the number of intervals equals to the number of trees. Very good. Okay, so let's make a conclusion together. We can know from the previous practices the number of trees and the number of intervals, they have their own special relationship. It depends on different types of tree plantings. When the trees are planted on both ends, we can know that the number of trees is larger than the number of intervals. Because when we use our packaging method, that is to pack a tree and an interval together, we pack 1 pack, 2 packages, 3 packages, 4, 5, 6, and we will find that there is a tree left in here. So that means the number of trees is larger than the number of intervals. And when we calculate the number of trees, we need to use the number of intervals plus 1 equals to the number of trees. And if no trees are planted on both ends, so how many trees are there? 5 trees. And if you use our method again, we package 1 tree and 1 interval together, and to check it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can find it, there is an interval left out. So that means the number of intervals is larger or smaller than the number of trees. Yes, it's larger than the number of trees. So we can find that if we need to find the number of trees, we need to use the number of intervals plus 1 or minus 1. Minus 1 equals to the number of trees. Good job. And if only tree is planted on one end, that means here is no tree. So how many trees are there? 6 trees. And how many intervals? 6 intervals. So we use our packaging method to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Are there anyone left behind? No. So what conclusion can we make? Yes, we can make it as the number of intervals equals to the number of trees. Okay, and for the circular road, what happened for the circular road? The number of trees is also equals to the number of intervals. Let's see, there are 6 trees and 6 intervals, and we package them together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So again, no one is left behind. All are well packaged. They can find their friends. So the number of intervals equals to the number of trees. So we can know the relationship between the number of trees and the number of intervals in the 4 types of questions. Finding out the number of intervals is another key point to calculate tree planting to count the intervals first. So how can we get the interval? Remember that we have talked before. We can use division method to get our number of intervals first. And the second step is we need to determine which one is outside, which one is more. Let's think, if the tree is outside, the tree is left over. So that means the number of trees is more than the number of intervals, right? If the interval is outside, the interval is left behind. So that means the number of intervals is larger than the number of trees. So which one is on the outside, which one is left behind, that means the number of which one is larger, which one is more. And it will be the same if all are on outside. That is this condition. Trees on one end or circular, because no one is left behind. Okay, and do we need to remember this? This seems so complicated. Actually, you can just remember these two processes and you can draw a simple diagram to determine which question type it is, so you can do the question quickly. And let's see if you have understand. Okay, in this question, let's read it. A road which is 20 meters long and is to be planted with trees at an interval of 5 meters. So how many trees can be planted if there are trees planted at both ends of the road? First step, what do we need to do? Yes, we need to get the number of intervals. So how many intervals are there? How many intervals? How can we calculate? 20 divided by 5 and equals to 4. Very good. And the second step, what do we need to do? Yes, we need to determine the type of question. Which type is it? It is talking about both ends. So let's draw a simple diagram. Maybe here is a tree, here is a tree, and maybe in the middle, here is a tree. So we can see that, oh, there are 3 trees, but 2 intervals. So the number of trees is larger than the number of intervals. So how many trees are there? Yes, there are 4 plus 1 equals to 5 trees. So we can write it down. There are 5 trees planted. Okay, seems like this question is very simple, right? But if we change it into another question, the road is no more 20 meters. Maybe the road we make it as 100 meters. So how can we calculate it? Can we still draw a diagram and draw many trees? No, right? So what can we do? First step, what should we do? We need to find the intervals first, and the number of intervals is 100 over 5 equals to 20. And from a simple diagram, we can only draw a simple diagram to help us to determine which question type it is. So from this simple diagram, we know, oh, it means the number of trees is larger than the number of intervals. So for 100 meters, and we know there are 20 intervals. So how many trees? That is 20 plus 1 equals. And when you do the word problem, remember to write the final sentences. Remember to write this answer, or else you will lose 21 trees. So remember this, okay? And let's move on to the next question. A road which is 30 meters long is to be planted with trees at an interval of 5 meters. 2 ends of the road are blocked by stones. Remember this. And so how many trees can be planted? First, what should we do? Yes, we need to get the number of intervals. So how many intervals? How can we calculate it? By the method of division. Very good. So we use 30 over 5 and equals to 6. And this is the number of intervals. And the second step, we need to find the number of trees, right? So we can draw a simple diagram to help us to determine which question type is it. What did the question say? It said 2 ends of the road are blocked by stones. That means no trees can be planted here. Trees can only be here. So how many intervals? 1, 2, 3. And how many trees? 2 trees. So that means the number of intervals is larger than the number of trees. And so for this kind of question, we can know that to use the number of intervals minus 1 equals to the number of trees. Very good. And we just need to fill in our answer to the question is okay, and move on to the next question. Okay, a road 42 meters is to be planted with trees at an interval of 7 meters. how many trees can be planted if there is a tree planted on one end of the road? What should we do for the first step? Yes, we should get the number of intervals. So, how can we write the calculation? It is 42 divided by 7 equals to 6. And the second step, we need to determine the type of the road, and this is on one end. So let's draw a simple diagram. What means on one end? Can we plant tree here? Maybe we plant a tree here. So can we plant any tree here? No. And trees are planted here. So how many intervals? 3 intervals. And how many trees? 3 trees. So the number of trees equals to the number of intervals. And we can know that the number of trees is 6. Very good. And we need to write down our answer. 6 trees can be planted. Very good. And we move on to the next one. The circumference. Remember what is the meaning of circumference? It means perimeter, and it is talking about the length of a round object. Of a rounded flower bed on the plaza, its length 28 meters. A potted flower is put on the flower bed every 4 meters. So how many potted flowers can be put? First step, what should we do? We should get the number of intervals. So how can we calculate it? We use 28 divided by 4 and equals to 7. So the second step, we need to find the question type. So which question type is it? It is a round flower bed, so it means we need to use the circular question type. And let's see if there is 1, 2, 3, 4 flowers. And how many intervals? 4 intervals. That means the number of flowers equals to the number of intervals. So it is 7. Very good. And we need to write our answer down at the end. That means that 7 potted flowers can be put. Okay, so we finished the questions, and let's make the conclusion here again. In the tree planting problems, the first and foremost, we need to get the intervals first by division method. And we know that if a tree is left outside, that means the number of tree is larger. And if an interval is left outside, that means the number of interval is larger. And if trees are planted on one end or in circular condition, that means all the trees and the intervals are well packaged. So the number of trees and the number of intervals are equal. Okay, and in this lesson, we learned the relationship between the number of trees and the number of intervals. So hope that you can all know how to do this type of question after today. And this is the end for today's lesson. Thank you and bye-bye!